Ladies and gentlemen, Eric Sykes.
Thank you. And welcome to another edition of the Antiques Roadshow.
Right.
How are you, Graeme?
I'm very well, thanks. You?
Graeme is my inquisitor.
Yeah. You comfortable?
Pardon?
You started out in Oldham, yeah? As a lad. Did you see...
Well, my parents were shot. They were a big laugh. But you see... No, there was... You know, I had a shocking dream last night.
Yeah?
I dreamt what would happen if in the middle of this interview I dried up.
And what happened?
Now I know. Can you try something else?
Well, no. I was wondering if there was radio or cinema or...
No, we didn't have a radio, I think, until I was about 9 years old, and that was a cat's whisker.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
My father built it himself, and it's a thing with earphones, and he said, and me and my two brothers had an earphone between us. It shows what a peculiar family we were. And then away did. And it's a band, it's a band. Oh, I said, yeah, and that was it. We never heard anything else. We put it back in a coal shed.
What about the local flea pit? You go down there, there's movies and silent movies.
No, we did Saturday morning, you know, we as children, we went into Tupness because they were a bit posher than the pennies. And what happened was, they were all in silent in those days, and if there's any scene where there's any kissing or anything like that, the whole lot, you had on an orange peel, and then the lights would go up, and the manager would come on the stage and say, hey, listen to that. Anymore, we won't show the rest of it. So, that's how it was in those days. Hello.
Did you have any favourites who might have influenced you, do you think?
Yes, Laurel and Hardy.
Oh, right.
Oh, they were, whenever they were on, that lovely introduction that they had, you know, da-ding, 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 you knew instinctively, immediately, it was funny, and the whole audience were, oh, and whatever they did, they never let anybody down, and they were...
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, well, so, you see, they broke every rule in the book. You see, for instance, you can't make abstract jokes about things like that. Stan Laurel sits there, and he gets some tobacco, he puts it in the palm of his hand like that, and he goes... and he goes... and his thumbs are light. and he goes... Now, all the time he's doing this, Oliver Hard is looking at him like this. And he's breaking rule number 2. Rule number 2 is never look at the camera. But he uses it as an audience. And he goes... and he's trying to light his thumb. which we know he can't do. But all through the picture he's going... when he thinks nobody's looking. And then the last shot of all, he goes... But this was Laurel and Hardy, and God bless them, they did such a lot for comedy.
And some of your later work, your silent work, there's a lot of Laurel and Hardy kind of gags that you did.
Yes, but only I mean, there's certain rules about comedy, and it's a question whether they put them together. I remember when I was writing the show for Hattie Jakes and me, and I had to submit the scripts, you know, and I put them in, and then the head of Light Entertainment came up to me, and he's got the paper like that, one of them, you know, and he said, 7 pages of script. I said, yes. He said, 7, and we're paying you all this money? I was getting 25 quid a week. And I said, listen, Tom, he was called Tom. I said, listen, Tom, it's 7 pages. Had it been 3 pages, you'd have to pay me twice as much. And he went on, he said, you're mad. And I've been like that ever since. Graeme, your questions are marvellous.
Let's remind ourselves of some of Laurel and Hardy's magic. We've got a clip of them here from a movie called The Music Box, and showing just what a wonderful comedy proper piano can be.
Well, it is. You see, when you're doing silent comedy, you rely on A, the props, B, the music, and C, the sound effects. And way up behind that in the line is the actors. Because you have to, you know, you get the casual people who go, you know, there was one scene in one film when Stan Laurel was walking up the park, and you can see when he's walking up, and sitting on a bench there is Stan Laurel, and he's sitting like this with one leg underneath him. And it's just after the First World War. And Stan Laurel Oliver Hardy stops and says, Stanley. And he goes up to him, my dear Stanley. And says, hello, Ollie. And he looks down and he says, oh. And he picks him up in his arms. And he carries him all the way back to his apartment and then puts him down and he goes, and straight away, straight into the camera. Another fine. Anyway,
we've got some on the screen for you.
Oh, thank you.
Here we go.
Forgive my
Hardy.
back. What a sequence. And do you see how that followed on from one to the other? The piano went over the thing, so did Oliver Hardy. He stood up on top. Then he goes on. It all runs into one thing. All that joke is one joke. And I think it's absolutely marvellous. I wish I could do that.
Well, I think some people here think you might have done already. I mean, you've done
just
pretty
sat
well.
here.
I'm not going to bother asking you too many questions, Eric. What?
He just rattled them off. He's discovered all my life in 5 minutes.
Yeah. What I'm going to do is throw some names at you, because there are people who've been very important in your career and that
Yes.
you've worked with. And it surprised me, reading your autobiography, how important Bill Fraser was. Bill Fraser, who played Snudge in Bootsy and Snudge. Yeah.
Yes, well, when the war was over, we were in Germany, and the all finished, the peace signed. And Bill Fraser, he was a flight lieutenant in those days. We were in a mobile signals unit for the RAF. And he formed like a repertory company, a vaudeville. It was like review, that's what we were doing. And people had to come and have an audition. And also in that lot was Dennis Norden. Would you believe it? All 6'3" of him. And he's always there. And he was like a confidant to Bill. And the man came in one day to have an audition, and Bill said, yes, sir. Well, he said, what do you do? And this fella said, there's a corporal, I think. He said, I eat razor blades. And then Bill said, oh, I see. Well, go on then. And he took the razor blade out of his pocket, and he took the paper off it like that, and he went. Now, they could all hear the crunching of it. After 3 or 4 minutes, he went, Then he held Bill's hand out like he and spat it all out on his hands. And Bill said, you're probably better off in Calgary. So he didn't get the job. But then after that, I came in. And it was a funny thing because I didn't like my name, and I've never been happy about Eric Sykes. So he said to me, all right, like, what's your name? And I said, straight out the back of it, I said, Rick Allen. He said, okay, Rick, what do you do? I said, well, I'm Rick Allen. He said, I'm sorry, but I haven't heard of you. And I turned to, because about 20 of them all looking at me like that. And I just looked over like that at them, and they all went, they'd never heard of me either. And I don't blame them, because that's the first I'd have heard of it. So I said, right, well, again, I must ask you, what do you do, Rick? He said, Rick Allen, don't you know me, Rick? And he said, I'm sorry. I said, I did it, and again, I used to do an 8-minute drunk act without saying a word. Right, you're in like that. I picked up my small kit and went over to join the lads, and they're all, oh, here's a real pro, you know. Anyway, the first, when we rehearsed like that, we were, they'd written a special sketch for me, and it was a table outside a bistro, and I was having drinks like that, and the saucers were piling up like that French bistro. And I was trying to act drunk. And do you know something? Being drunk is the most difficult art in acting. And people think, oh no, it's all you have to do is just slur your words. You don't have to slur your words. It's an art. I was hopeless. Now, there's a man, and I'd had a lot of practice. But there was a, what do you call it, there was a fellow also called Vic Gordon. Original name was Gordon Horswell. He changed it to Vic Gordon. And he was about 36, so I thought he was an old man, and he could do anything. I mean, really, what a brilliant, he was a vaudeville man. And he used to give me tips. No, Eric, no, what you should do. No, Rick. You know, and he's giving me tips, and when I laugh because he's funny. Well, I couldn't do it to save my life. And what happened was then that Bill Fraser then, he said to me, I'm sorry, Eric, I'm going to have to let you go. I'm going to give Vic this part, you know. And I thought, well, and I said, well, it's been good while it lasted, Bill. And I picked up my small kit, I walked to the door, and I stopped. And on another instinct, I came back. I said, by the way, I think I should mention, I was also in a 4-part harmony team. Look, this is gospel truth. And he said, oh, yes. He said, what were they called? The first thing came out of my mind, I said, the Four Aces. Now, before the war, the Four Aces were very, very famous indeed and very good. And I nearly said the Ink Spots. And I would have been in trouble with the racing board. Anyway, Bill said to me, he said, well, do you think you could find another 3 out of this lot so we could make another 4-part harmony? I said, yeah, I don't see any problems. And I went to the side like that, and put my kit down, I'm in again, right. So Vic Gordon comes over to me, and he said, he said, you were never in the Four Aces. I said, how do you know? He said, because I was. Now, this is absolutely true. So, no, and I said to him, I said, well, do you think we could get another couple out of this lot? He said, yeah, I'll tell you what, we can do all the acts that we used to do, all the nuns. Okay. Right, lads. Now then, let's hear you. And they had a little audition and picked 2, and then we went on as the Four Aces. And it was a great thing.
So that was your...
I'm sorry, I thought you'd gone.
No. No, I'm no fool. So after the RAF, did you go carry straight on in show business then, or?
Well, no, I went down to London then to just make my fortune.
Yeah.
But by that time, you see, I was transferred from the RAF, this was an RAF thing, to the Army Welfare Services, which were run from Vincent. So I was the only RAF man, I was a sergeant by that time, only RAF man in that group. Everybody else was khaki. It was Army Welfare Services. So I went out with charge of a few shows and one thing and another, and I was compere in a show called Strictly Off the Record. Compere, that's telling a lot of jokes. It's a stand-up with money. And then come time for Mighty Mob, and I had to go down. And I went to see Bill. It was not this Bill, it was Bill Day, he was called. And he said, Eric, I can't demob you. You're Air Force and I'm Army. It was a Major Day. And I said, wait a minute then. Well, what are we going to do? He said, well, I don't know. So I went out for a few times. And then he called me back to the office after about 3 weeks, and he said, I've had an idea. We'll send you home on compassionate leave. And you can argue your case with them. I said, thank you. So I came home. First thing I did, I wrote to my MP. And this is true, and you can check it with Hansard. My case was brought up in the House of Commons. And it had only been, because I was 6 months overdue for the mob. And in the letter, and I had a letter from was it Freitas or something? It was the Minister of Defence or whatever, a letter there, and he said his apologies, and it only happened to one other person in India, and that was the thing, and I got the apology.
So that was the end of your RAF career.
Yeah, and near the end of the RAF. Thank you for getting me out of that hole.
It's all right.
I'll do the same for you. One day.
So we've now found you, like Dick Whittington, going to London to seek your fame and fortune. Did you find fame and fortune?
Yes, but it goes on and on there. You don't realise it. You see, no. What he did, I'm sorry, before he did me that compassionately, Bill Day said, look, I'll give you a 1500 weight, and you go around to the RAF bases and find out which one you belong to. So, all right, so I'm a sergeant, and I go along there, and I say, yes, am I on your books, and everything like that? And they ordered the room, and he said, no, we don't have any Sykes here. Okay, thank you. But he said, you're a sergeant. I said, yeah, where am I going to go now? Well, he said, there's one up the road. It's about 300 kilometres. That's the next thing. You'll have to stay here the night, and I did. And because I was a sergeant, I got my weekly ration of whiskey, a bottle of whiskey. Because all sergeants got that. And then I suddenly had another idea. I thought, well, you know, I've been doing this for about 3 months now, and I hadn't had a penny pay. Oh. Went to the pay office like that, so, right, thank you. So that was that now, and I set off. Now this was it, I had a real thing going then, and that's when he called me back and stopped it. Otherwise, I would have been a member of the board of Krups. Again, Bill.
Right. You're in London.
Yes.
Seeking your fortune.
No, I'll tell you.
Or something else happened first.
I'll tell you what. The same thing, Bill Dane, I had a message when I was in repertoire. I was in shop at Sly Corner. And the stage manager came and he said, there's been a phone call for you. And I said, who from? He said, Frankie Howard. There you are, you see. I said exactly the same thing. and you know, it was Frankie Howard at that time. He had 42% of the nation. That was his listening figure in a show called Variety Bandbox. He was the biggest thing in comedy. He was God in comedy, and he wanted to talk to me. And he was in pantomime in Leeds at that time, and I was in Warminster. Now, that's not a pun, that's true. I could have said Kidderminster, but it never occurred to me. Now then. And he said, he was in the thing there. And do you know what? He was so big, Frank, he was in pantomime, that they were queuing right around the theatre waiting for returns. Not the book, but waiting for it. That's how popular this man was. So he was at the top of the tree. And I went to his dressing room. Now, he rang me. I said, how did you get hold of my number? He said, you've been a problem. He said, because in the Army Welfare Service, he was in the Army during the war, and in the Army Welfare Services, he was also in Winson with the thing. And he'd been to see the show Strictly Off the Record, and he'd seen me standing up there. And he wanted to know, could he have my act? The one that I'd done up there. I said, well, it's not mine. I got it from America. And he said, well, do you think you could write for me? And I said, yeah, no problems. No, No, he went on the stage. No, I wrote some crackers for him, you know. No, madam, no. No, listen. You smile, that's it. Show your teeth. No, just show them. Don't let them round. You see? So, and that's how I got from nothing to up with the thing. My bread and butter was then my champagne and caviar. Right, up with Frankie Howard, and of course that's how I really got my start.
And you went on to write in the early days of television for Frankie Howard's TV series.
Yes. Well, the first show I wrote for Frankie Howard, they wouldn't have it because it was too far ahead. You know what they did, what he did. He was supposed to be in the play, in the plot writer. He comes in, and he is one of triplets, so he could. I don't know what is my idea. The BBC's, so they could get one actor, or three actors for the price of one. He was triplets, so he came into this lawyer's office, and the lawyer said they'd been left a thing. They would get £1,000 if they could double it, whatever it was, by the thing. So that's what it was. Now, Frankie Howard starts talking to say, and you know, and a little lady comes in with a basket of roses and says, oh, isn't it hot? Is your father out yet? And is your father up yet? And oh, well, he's going to be late. And she goes off, and Frank said, who's she? He said, I don't remember a rehearsal. So he goes on for a little bit, and she comes back, and she said, don't forget, we're having the Mainwarings for supper. And off she goes. Now, what happens is then, I said, can we have the curtain, please? So the scene was cut off, and it was like the Richmond riverbank, with big words across it, interlude. But behind it, we could hear Frank. Who is she? And he was going on like this. Well, I don't know. No, she's supposed to be a solicitor's office. She's ruining the whole play. And so anyway, the Richmond riverbank says, yes, thank you, she's gone. That's what you hear his voice, and the thing goes off. And then he said, now, where were you? And he said, well, goes on with it for a bit, and on she comes again. He said, madam, I don't remember you at rehearsals. She said, I don't have to go to rehearsals. I've been in plays in the West End for 45 years, and I've always got a round on, is your father up yet? You see? So fine. And now 3 times that thing, Richmond River, went, with interlude on. And the last time he goes, righto, thank you, thank you, thank you. Nothing. Little pause. Then Frank comes running on to the riverbank like that and says, okay. And the thing goes up, and he comes back into the office of the thing and goes, oh, it's a long way from Richmond. Now, this was the kind of humour it was, and they said, no. Look, you leave the technicalities for us, for goodness sake. In any case, you couldn't do it because this is autumn, and that Richmond wouldn't have leaves on the trees. And that's the first time I realised I was in a mental home.
But that joke was way ahead of its time, wasn't it? I mean,
yeah, that's what I said. It was so far forward, this.
Yeah.
And I picked it up, and I said, well, and walked out. That was it. There were two of them, one sitting and another one leaning out, and they were both seniors. Seniors. Oh, no, wait a minute now. Leave the technicalities to us. No, I could have shot it myself with a Kodak, with a brownie. Go on, then.
Right, I will. So you stayed with the radio and worked for, some say, the notorious programme Educating Archie, which was the adventures of a ventriloquist dummy on the radio.
I'll tell you what, they're showing that again. Not showing it, but you listen to it on Channel 7 now.
7, yeah.
But there's no people who have written it on it, because I wrote the first 3 series. And there was 2 of us, Sid Collin and me. And we wrote the first 3 series. And what do you call it? Well, she won't bother. She's a lovely. But what she call it? That girl used to be a schoolgirl.
Oh, Beryl Reid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Beryl Reid came to do the show, and she said she had a lot of jokes that she wanted to tell. I said, Beryl, we don't write jokes. This is a situation show. We don't run shows. Well, could I just find... No. You see, if you say that, it'll spoil the end of it. And so we had that. And after about 3 shows, the producer and Peter Bruff came to me and said, Eric, give her a few jokes. I said, no, this is a... Now, on those 3 series I'd done, twice we'd won the radio award for the year, right? So I said, no, it's a situation. And we got so heated in the thing that I said, okay. So one of us has got to go. I said, it's either her or me. And I went. Thank God for that. So it's going on now, and it's going on, and it's not a patchy, it's not situation anymore, it's jokes. And talking of jokes.
Yeah.
Hello.
But I mean, apart from I'm still here, Eric, it's all right. Trust me. Apart from...
Hang on a minute, I'll just check. Yeah, it's all right.
Apart from Beryl Reid, it had there were wonderful guests or regulars on Educating Archie.
I know, they always got people on, but
Robert Morstan.
They did when we were doing it, honestly, when Sid and I were doing it.
Yeah, and
But
Tony Hancock was one of them.
We had a team then.
Yeah.
But what they did, they got like they had the fellow that did well in America all the time, what's he called?
Julie Andrews.
No, that was his father. No, it was, what's he called? Bob, he did that milkman thing.
Oh, Benny Hill.
Benny Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Benny Hill was in it.
Yeah.
I mean, we know how successful Benny was. And they got everybody in with names. Fred...
Tony Hancock.
Not him. The other one.
Max Bygraves.
Well, Max was in our show as well.
Yeah, yes.
Because the first line that came in was, I'm arrived to prove it, I'm here.
Yes. But...
I'm sorry, but that was one of my best.
I was interested that Peter Bruff, it was a bit like Kenneth Horne. He was one of those rich businessmen
Yeah.
who did comedy as a sort of hobby. He didn't have to be a ventriloquist, did he?
He wasn't.
Well,
I remember at one rehearsal he said to someone or other, can you hear me? And they said, the reply was, only Menarche is speaking. He's a funny old lad, but they were lovely people, and we had such a, I mean, Hattie was in it now, Japes. And we were a good team, and we were, you know,
yeah.
It's a shame, but I'm glad that I'm not in it because I'll be too old now.
But you got together with some other writers to form
Why haven't I got mine written down?
What? This was yours. I got it out in the dressing room. You were going to talk about Associated London Scripts, which you formed with Spike Milligan and others.
Yes.
That was...
Yeah, dear old Spike. Well, you see, now, you know the lady who walked on with me, that's our manager. She managed Spike and she managed me. Norma Farms. And she's really, I can't tell you, she's really wonderful. She comes here to see me. That I'm all right. And, you know, before we came on, she combed my hair. I was looking forward to doing that myself. I don't get a lot of pleasure.
So, Norma...
Oh, yes, Spike, yeah. Norma, and now Spike, she's only got me to look after. And she came, like, with the building, wonderful. And Spike and I had fun. It was fun all the time. When we started, we had our office was over at Greengrocer's in Shepherd's Bush. And Shepherd's Bush was quite busy then, you know, around that thing. And we used to get out on the pavement, and we took it in turns to limp. So one of them would limp like that, while the other was helping him. And all the traffic would pull up like that. And we get over to the other side, and then we set off like that. And what he got, we went to Bertorelli's across the road for our thing. And next to Bertorelli's was an undertaker's. A Spike. He lay down on the pavement, and he knocked the door, and he said, "Shop." Well, it took him 56 years to answer that knock. God bless you, lad.
I think when...
And what he called it, I'll tell you the fun we used to have. His secretary came into when we were at Orme Court, this was, where we are now. And his secretary came in, and she had a sealed envelope, like, and she handed it to me. But, "Dear Eric, do you fancy a bit of lunch today? Sincerely, Spike." And she got me. See, so I got my secretary, and I said, "Dear Spike, yes, I do fancy a bit of lunch, and how about 1 o'clock? Sincerely, Eric." And she took it in like that, and said, his secretary came back again. "Dear Eric, why so late? Sincerely, Spike." So I got my secretary and I said, "Dear Spike, I am working on something and it will take me that time to finish it. Sincerely, Eric." Thanks. She took it in. "Dear Eric, 1:30 and all the stuff will be half cooked. Sincerely, Spike." And as I said with the other one, then he came in personally. He said, "We've got to go at 1 o'clock. And I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm running out of paper." But that's the happy times we had together.
Well, I'm going to give you a rest now because we're moving on.
Fun?
Move on to television because the shows that you're probably...
Yes?
shows you're best known for are probably Sykes and A,
Yes.
which later became Sykes. We've got some clips of those series, you working with the wonderful Hattie Jakes. So let's have a look at some clips now, and then we can talk about it afterwards. A bit unfair to show an outtake there, but you hadn't seen his teeth before he came in, had you? With Peter
No.
Sellers.
No, I haven't seen it since we made that thing. But I'll tell you what, that was what you call a dry up. It really was. I mean, Hat had gone, and she's a great giggler. And when she's gone, I've gone. Now then, and Peter, who doesn't usually giggle, the three of us were giggling, and I thought they were going to shut the whole show down. But they didn't. It added a little bit of... You see, because we hadn't seen Peter until the final dress rehearsal. And then we'd all gone to our dressing rooms and makeup. And we hadn't seen him till he walked through that door. So when I'm sitting there like that, and Hat's let him in, he says, hello. And he's got his teeth blacked out, and he's got his head, and he's not like Peter Sellers at all. He's really like this convict. And that's what made us laugh. I mean, he was such a wonderful, I don't know, I think Peter, I'm lost in admiration for him.
They were great series.
Oh, go on then.
I was surprised. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
I was surprised to read in your autobiography, which is an excellent book, I'm here to say, that it wasn't your idea, that you, Sykes and Hattie Jakes and that setup was actually Johnny Spate.
Yeah, Johnny Spate wrote the pilot.
Yeah.
Now, Johnny, dear Johnny, he was the best, I'll say this without fear of favour. He was the best writer in the world, I think, for anything. He wrote plays, he wrote dramas, he wrote comedy. Well, look how long his Warren Mitchell, Alf Garnett thing ran. And the fellow was looking after me, looking after my years, and he's a senior member of the NHS. He said to me one day, he said, where does he get all his information from? Johnny had just done a show about the NHS, and he was spot on everything that Alf Garnett said, and he really was. And he wrote the pilot show. But the thing was, Johnny was so sought after as a writer that he didn't think it was going to be a series. It was a one-off to John. So I had to carry on from there, writing it. But Johnny had Hattie and me as husband and wife. And I said, no, that's the only change I'm going to make, John. We're not husband and wife. We're brother and sister. And John went, he stuttered. And so he gave me a chance for me to jump in. So he did, poor old John. And he said, I said, no, wait a minute, better still, twins. Now, John, you can see him starting to laugh then. He said, wait a minute. No, wait a minute, better still, identical twins. And he said, he knew a brick wall when he walked into one. And from then on, I took over the writing. But it was Johnny's idea. But you see, you know how Johnny writes? It was like he had this Mr. Brown next door. And Johnny writes a lot of social things, in as much that Mr. Brown was the haves, and we next door were the people who didn't have two halfpennies to scrub together. And that was the thing, that was been the haves against the have-nots. It was with the way he writes. But I didn't. I just used it as he was a funny man. And any time you wanted an official or an official.
Diplomats and people like that.
Diplomat. Well, yeah. By jingle, were you there?
Yeah. I saw that one too. But you had great people. I mean, you had Richard Wattis, but Derek Guyler came along later as the policeman.
Yes, he did.
I've always wondered, where did the name Corky come from? It always made me laugh.
Yeah, but it's always a thing. But like he said, like he always used to come round and the neighbourhood, like on his manor and his beat, and he'd have 5 breakfasts in a day. He'd knock at the door and he'd go, "Oh, no, that smells very nice, and I suppose is that English bacon?" And oh yeah, would you like? Yeah, so So what he did then, he took his helmet off, and they'd say, "Well, did you enjoy that Corky?" Yes, fine. I said, "Lovely." And then he put his helmet on. He said, "Well, listen, Corky, let's do the Corky. Helmet on, Constable Turnbull. Helmet off, Corky." That's how that came. And I've answered that, haven't I?
You have, absolutely. But
that's the box I've ticked.
I should do it myself, shouldn't I? Yeah. The Corky mystery solved, I'll write down here. The other thing that intrigued me was the Cuckoo Clock, Peter.
Yes, well, we had, like, with the hats, we had names for everything, the settee and everything like that. And it was just part of the scattiness of the thing. I remember, like, sitting at breakfast one day, and I was reading this, look at this woman's magazine, terrible. Oh, look at this. It's what do you call it? The woman, first of all, quite attractive, wants to meet a man of her own age, 32. Good grief. And they write this rubbish. And look, they've left a phone number. What is it? Acton 413. And the phone rings, and she says, "Hello, Acton 413. And that was the opening to another show. But that was the kind of family we were.
You had lots of great guests on there, but there was one in particular I wanted to ask you about, Henry Magee.
Yes.
Who I worked with a couple of times, a lovely chap, and
yes, he was.
I think very underrated. He was terribly funny.
Oh, very, very. But he was, you see, probably, you've probably forgotten or you didn't realise, but Charlie Prompt.
Chaplin. Caroli.
No. What's he called, the little fella? English.
Drake. The Worker.
Well, The Worker.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful series, and Henry Magee is the man behind the counter. He was in the jobs office, and that was Henry Magee.
Yeah.
And he was a wonderful actor and a real lovely man. You know, you don't often meet people like that, especially in our business.
But Hattie was very special to your career, wasn't he? You worked a lot with her apart from that series, as well as in the series you worked with her.
Yes.
On other things. And
I've got you up a gum tree now, haven't I? Now you know what it feels like.
What I was working towards was, why did you move from 24 to 28 Sebastopol Terrace?
Yeah.
Why did you go 2 doors up? One of the series was 24, and then you were 28.
Yes, well, 4 is easier to polish.
Right.
Listen, I didn't know you had a few jokes lined up.
That was it. But now, this is a personal memory. Apart from the series that you did, I remember when I were a lad seeing some of the specials that you used to do, like Panto Mania and things from Earl's Court, where they gave you sort of a free rein to use all the newsreaders and presenters and people like that.
Yeah, and you see, a thing about an actor, when he dries up, an actor at a dress rehearsal, he will never, ever admit that he's dried up. This is what they use, actors, at a dress rehearsal. Yes, well, now, Annabella, I want you to... Excuse me, is this table going to be here on the night? And I wrote a little sketch about this. So they said and I came up on stage with, I was supposed to be directing at one of these things, and it was I've forgotten his name now. Lovely actor. Freddie Mills was in it as well, the boxer.
Oh, right.
And I came up, and I said, pardon? And he said, is this table going to be here on the night? Oh, I said, I don't know, I'll check. Stage manager. And he comes on and he said, what's the problem? I said, Mr. Buttigieg wants to know if this table's going to be here tonight. Well, that's not my pigeon. I'll ask the Chippy. Chippy! Is that table going to be here tonight? He said, no. No, we're going to have a proper table. We'll have a proper Georgian table tonight. Thank you. Okay, let's carry on. And he said, just a minute, what was all this? I said, well, you started it. He said, I was merely shielding my eyes from the footlights. I said, oh, I thought you were a mason. And they don't say, when they've done that, an only actor like that, he'll say, like, is this table going to be here tonight? And they say, you've done it. Just a minute. No, it's all right. Okay, thank you. Right, where were we? Thank you. And he's got his cue. And nobody ever knows he would dry it up at that time, because you can't. Hello.
That's all right. Now, now talking about the footlights.
Listen, you're had enough. Because we're in your hands. And if you just, say, that's enough, okay.
You want to see some more clips?
Clips?
Yeah.
Round the ear hole?
If necessary. No, we've got... I was going to ask you actually about Big Bad Mouse and Jimmy Edwards, because that was something you did a long time.
Oh, wonderful.
Do you want some water?
Yes, please.
Fizzy or still?
He's a doctor, did you know that?
Yeah.
I think he's marvellous. He gave me a thorough going over before we started.
And another after we've finished. Eric, this is a lovely theatre. Have you been here before?
Oh, I've played here in plays before. And I had to come back today because I'd left a pair of socks in the dressing room.
Well, Eric, with the compliments of Bristol Old Vic management, here is a pair of Armani socks.
Eh? Oh, look at that. Oh, I think that's marvellous. Thanks. Thank you.
Pleasure. Jimmy Edwards and Big Bad Mouse, you took a play which was
it was wonderful.
Quite funny.
Well, it was changed every night.
Yeah, but you tore it apart.
Well, we thoroughly enjoyed it. But, when I think of that play, I think of things that we did then we could never do. Every night, the secretary used to come in. This is when I'd turned the tables on them all. I wasn't the humble clerk. I was the hello. And she came in and she had these mints, these after-dinner mints like that in paper. And she said, oh, take two. And I said, thank you, mister. And I picked one of that, and he's at the other side of the stage, like you look at his stage, sitting at his desk. I'm behind mine, and I used to go, boom, flick it through there, and he used to sit there and go, and catch it. This is true. Never had to move a muscle every night. And one night I did with both of them. But now I can't understand how we did it. I wish we had that on film somewhere because that was something classical. It was, I can't tell you. He was good. I must go down to see Mr. Porrington in Invoices. No, I can't. Why not? We don't have Mr. Porrington. You see, things like Jim, like that, and he used to get things on the paper, and he used to go like that. Get another one. Waste paper basket, and without a little thing, he could do that with a lovely thing. He used to sit back in his chair, and one time, when they had a matinee, but I didn't know that they had a matinee on this day, and so it was a day like one of these, like bank holidays or something like that. I know that there were protest marches and things like that going on. And I didn't know there was a matinee. So I've watched Fulham playing football. And after football, I had a few drinks with Johnny Haynes, who was the captain of Fulham. And then I was running over to the theatre. Meanwhile, the play's going on with my understudy. And this is Act 3. And I make my entrance, which is suave from the you know. So like that. Now, I haven't been, but all through the play is Jim is telling them, you know, don't go because Eric's on his way. The last we heard of him, he was in Regent Street, and he's trying to get his way through the crowds. And he's doing all this. Now, he's what do you call it? He shouldn't be long now. And then, the Act 3, I make my entrance, and they got the biggest applause ever. And Jim says, that's what you do all the time. You get laughs for nothing. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah.
More than answer it. We started off by looking at some of the movies that you've been in, but you also directed your own silent movies, which you're probably equally famous for, as well as the television work. The Plank being the classic one.
Thank you. Oh, that's lovely, isn't it?
I
wish you were mine and working.
I once read that Buster Keaton, he never wrote a script. He would shoot the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie and then make up the middle.
Well, I didn't. I never did.
Yeah.
You know, all of my silent movies were done for Thames Television because a lovely head of department there, of comedy there. I've forgotten his name, too.
Well, he was lovely, yeah.
You know who he is?
No.
What's he called? He's died now. But do you know what? I used to go into his office, and I said the thing, and this is it. Now, what happens is, there's a plank. Now, the plank, we're going to do that. Now, I've only got to say about 3 or 4 words, and he's on his feet, and he used to jingle his coins in his pocket like this. And he goes to the wall, and there's a big calendar on the wall, and he's looking at it. He said, well, will August suit you? And I say, yes, that'll be fine. And I go out, nothing else is said, and not a word on paper. And everyone I've had, Sykes and Mr. H is late and all this nonsense, not a word, because you shoot it with the camera. You put your commas in, you put it, so when I edit it, for instance, like one thing, you see, that's why you've got to know it from what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Now it has to go to an editor for everybody, and it's got nothing to do with the fellow who wrote it or the fellow who carried out the acting. So how does that editor know about the timing and everything? But if you've done it all, and Tommy Cooper, he got out the car, and he's going into the shop, a tobacconist for tops, and he's going to turn around to ask me if I want any fags. And he turns around like that, and then he does the biggest double take like that. And when I showed him the film, the end of the thing, all the cast, he said, I could move that fast. And I said, you didn't. I said, because when you turn around like that, I took 8 frames out so that when it was like that, it was... And he said, now, what editor do you know could have that nouns to take 8 frames out of a thing? So, in actual fact, we're doing ourselves a favor by doing all this. And let me ask you a question now. How do you write a silent film?
Quietly.
What did he say?
Quietly.
Bless you. I thought you were never going to say it. Now, the thing is that if you wrote walked into wall, people would read that and this. Now, I do know 2 writers who wrote about 12 films. And they said, you know, they came to me and they said they'd never been successful. Not one of them have been successful. And I said, well, what you've done is you've written it, every line. You've written it. It's like a 2.5-hour television show. And what they do, they go down to the readers. They have readers, all these film companies, and they get this script. And after they read the first page, they go, oh. Listen to this. And straight away, that film gets made. But the director hasn't got the room to do any cuts or anything because the dialogue is so funny. But nobody wants to sit and listen to dialogue for 2.5 hours. And that's why they weren't successful. Good for television, not for the big screen. I rest my case.
Well, if they don't want to listen to dialogue for 2.5 hours, we better wind up soon.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at some of those silent movies you were talking about. Let's run the selection here, starting with a bit from The Plank. I feel I've asked you so many questions that I was wondering if you'd like to answer some questions from the audience. All right for them to ask you?
Yeah, that's
someone?
fine. I love that.
Okay, let's... any questions for Eric? We'll have the house lights up a bit, then I can see. Anyone there?
Thoughts on Mike Benteen, himself a very funny man, leaving the Goons, beneficial or detrimental?
Mike Benteen, yeah? Asking what you felt about Michael Benteen leaving the Goons, whether that was to the good of the show or not.
Well, actual fact, it was the best thing for the Goons that he did leave because they had what they wanted. They had the cast, Spike Milligan, Harry Seacombe, and Peter Sellers, which we all know were great. And the thing was that they were all hard up in those days. And Michael Benteen was the only one who was working, and he was working in the West End, doing his act in the West End. So he was successful. So when he said, I don't want to be in the Goons, he was quite happy with what he was. But Michael made a mistake. But for the Goons, he didn't, because they all had various voices. He was a very funny man, Michael, but he made the same decision that I made with Beryl, what do you call it?
Beryl Reid.
Beryl Reid. Yeah. So there we have it.
Any more? Yes, one there.
Can I ask how Eric wrote his Spike Milligan, how he wrote the Goons, worked together on set?
Yeah, when you worked with Spike writing the Goon shows, did you work together on scripts or separate?
Well, no, for a time we did, because Spike, he wasn't a well man sometimes. And I could see, and he was so tired, he was so, drained he was. And he said, would you like to write the Goon show with me? And I wasn't too busy. I said, yeah, of course. So I was writing the Goon shows together, and I wrote quite a few. And then Spike, in the meantime, recovered. And so one day, we got into an argument about one word, and I don't know whether it was the or and. Now, that's just it. And I was saying, no, it's got to be in, Spike, because it's got the rhythm place. Oh, never mind the rhythm. It hasn't got to be. It's just holding things. It's not. Spike, not. So he got so uptight, he picked up a paperweight like that, and he threw it at me. This is right at the greengrocers. Now, luckily, I was so unexpected, I didn't move. Had I tried to dodge, I'd been dead now. It passed me and went straight to the window, about 5 floors down onto the pavement. Now, I went up, down the floors, and I picked it up, and I brought it back, and I put it down, and I said, the best line of any B movie. And I said, remember what day this is. Can you imagine anything so trite or so but you see, Spike, now he had an open-necked shirt on then, and I looked there, and on this he had red spots all over there, thing I'd never seen before, and I realized that his manic days, depression, were real. It was a real thing. And so I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. You write the next one, and I'll write the one after that. So we'll write alternate weeks. So we did write alternate weeks. And that's how it all happens. But I'm glad I did, because it gave me a new insight in how to get away with murder. Now then.
Any more?
Could I ask what his handicap is?
Golf, I presume. What's your handicap now?
Oh, my ears, my eyes, and my balance. Any more questions, please, or not?
Any more?
Listen, but no, be honest. Have you had enough now?
Let's take one more question. Yes, front row.
If Bruce Forsyth should get knighted, should Eric as well?
He said, if Bruce Forsyth should get knighted, should you get knighted as well? Do you think? I don't know. You can't say if you've been offered, can you?
See, I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy for old Bruce, you know. I've played golf so many times with Bruce, and he has this buggy cart now that's a state of the art. I mean, it's in better shape than his drawing room. A buggy cart, and also he drives around. Now, this is where it's all things, and you got curtains and everything like that, and I'm sitting in it like this, and we drive up to where I'm bowled on the fairway, and he switches a switch like that, and the buggy tells you how many yards to the hole. I don't know how, but if anyone wishes to check that, you ring up, and that's... Oh, but he's a lovely lad, Bernard. You say, what are you going to make of it? No, I'm in charge. Listen, I'm doing a lot of impressions tonight.
You are. Yes, very
Here's
good.
an impression of Graeme.
Very good. That's your best one yet. Eric, it has been an absolute joy. I think we'll draw the questions to a close, but there's one important thing which has still got to happen, and I'm going to ask Chris Daniels to come back on stage together with Peter Lord and David Sproxton from Aardman Animation, because they have a special moment to announce. Peter Lord, David Sproxton, Chris Daniels.
Hello, kid.
Oh, don't worry. They will not be speeches. But very quickly, we've all had a fantastic session, wonderful, wonderful session. You've been so generous in sharing it all with us. So now we would like to make a gesture back and give you something, as it were. And I've been asked to say why this is the Aardman Slapstick Award for comedy, for visual comedy. And just to say that Aardman, we have specialised in silent comedy. And Gromit, I must say, is himself quite a substantial silent star, due to not having a mouth. That helps. And more for...
I worked with Peter Sallis. About 2 years ago in Last of the Summer Wine.
I saw you. Yes.
Did you?
I did.
You cheeky thing.
He's a wonderful man, a wonderful man. So we're enthusiasts for silent comedy. Aardman are. I'd like to congratulate Chris here for the work he's done with this festival, which has been such an amazing hit and so important to Bristol. Well done, Chris. But we've been hearing about your amazing career in so many media, which is absolutely wonderful. But you would not be receiving this award, which I hope will go alongside your Golden Rose Montreux and the Oldie of the Year, 2002, I think was you, yes? And some few things as well. Anyway, this is for the mantelpiece. If it weren't for the work like The Plank, that wonderful silent comedy, which I saw at an impressionable age, and suddenly remembered how wonderful visual comedy can be. So, with thanks and many, many congratulations, this is from us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, lads, for all the work you've put in. And I really did expect this. Thank you very much.
Good evening, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Eric Sykes, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
There we go.
Who's taking me off?
I'll take you off.
Are you?
Yeah, go on. We'll go off together. Come on.
Thank you. Thank you.
There we go.
It's not a cake, is it?